Crabs are delicious creatures of the sea. They crawl and swim across the ocean floor in search of food and shelter. But how do we catch them without diving into the ocean and looking for them? We all want to catch some crabs when we go boating or fishing at sea during the day. Crab fishing depends on location and tides, how you present your bait, your crab traps, and how you identify your crabs. Location is a big part of finding crabs. Dungeness crabs are a favorite target, but there are also red rock crabs around the Sailor Sea. Dungeness crabs prefer eelgrass with sand and slow-moving water. Eelgrass areas tend to trap food and also provide shelter from ocean predators. Slow-moving water carries food to crab areas. Sometimes slow-moving water is hard to find around the straits, but an hour before and after low tide will give you slower water that makes it easier for crabs to move into your traps. In some areas, the incoming tide has weaker tidal currents for the crabs to contend with. Additionally, the incoming tide provides more salinity in the area, and crabs like salt water. Dungeness crabs can be found at depths of up to 300 feet. Generally, we can catch them from 10 feet to 100 feet. Make sure you have enough trapline for the change in tide. Sometimes the outgoing tide has stronger currents, pulling your gear deeper. Extra trapline increases your chances of finding your trap again. Having good bait is key, but presenting it properly will get them into your trap. Generally, fresh chicken, salmon, grouper, black bass, and meat are good choices for bait. You also need a good scent trail to attract the crabs to your trap. Having some shrimp, crab pellets or canned tuna cat food will help. You want to place the bait in the bottom and middle of your trap. Why the bottom? Crabs will climb to the top of your trap instead of going inside to eat if it is near the top of the cage. The same goes for bait near the sides of your trap. Placing bait at the bottom requires them to go inside the cage to get it. Placing fish in a bait cage or bait bag will help your bait last longer in the trap. Tougher bait tends to keep crabs in the trap longer before they try to escape. There are different types of crab traps on the market, but cage traps are what we use out on boats. There are commercial stainless steel crab traps and sport fishing crab traps, and we tend to use sport fishing crab traps because of the cost. An easily accessible trapdoor for crabs is key to catching more crabs. If a crab finds it difficult to get to the bait, it will leave. But when a crab gets into the trap and starts eating the bait, it creates a feeding frenzy. Other crabs will come to join the party. So find a trapdoor that opens without much effort but still closes so the crabs don't escape. Now remember the tidal current. This can be a problem for some sport crab traps due to their light weight. Adding a wire clamp or tying some weights to the bottom of the trap will help keep the trap firmly on the seabed. Once you pull the trap out of the water and see the crabs in the cage, you have to release the female crabs and the smaller crabs. How do you know which is female or male? When you turn the crab over, you can see a piece of shell in the middle of the crab's abdomen. If the shell is narrow and pointed like a pyramid, it is a male crab. If the shell is wide and round like a honeycomb, it is a female crab. Please release all the female crabs, so that we can harvest more crabs in the future. Please release each smaller crab back to the area where you caught it. Crabs are popular little critters for a few key reasons. They're fun to catch, delicious to eat, and can be used as bait to catch other species. If that's something you're interested in, learning how to catch crabs can be a great way to get your hands dirty and save a little money. A man smiles as he holds two large crabs on a cold day in Washington state, with clear blue water and evergreen trees as a backdrop. Before I name some of the more common species, keep in mind that there are about 7,000 species of crabs out there. Depending on where you are in the world, you might find completely different species every time you go out. But that also means that you have a good chance of finding some crabs whenever you're near salt water. Here are some of the more common crabs you might encounter. Stone crabs. This group is one of the most popular crabs today, with many anglers getting them. You can use them in many recipes and fishermen target them for their meaty claws. Fiddler crabs. If you've ever been to the beach, chances are you've seen these. These red crustaceans are popular all over the world. Fiddler crabs love to stroll along the sand and hide in small holes when needed. Anglers love to use them as bait, but they're quite small, so they're not really consumed. Blue crabs. These crabs are not only beautiful, they're delicious. You can catch blue crabs in the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico, where families and seafood lovers go crazy for them. Sand crabs. Also known as sandbugs, these are popular bait for many species. You can dig them up in the sand when you're at the beach and throw them on your hook. You'll likely come across many other crab species on your outdoor adventures. But, no matter the species, and whether you catch a big or small one, it's always a treat. While there may be many different species, crabs tend to have a lot in common. For example, these little creatures have a primary habitat that they prefer to live in, hide in, and forage in when looking for food and shelter. When you go crabbing, it's best to stick to the following areas and keep a close eye on your surroundings. Sometimes they can be hiding right in plain sight. A close-up of a crab hiding near a rock underwater on a sandy seabed. The best places to find crabs include mangroves, shorelines, bays, estuaries, marshes, piers, and jetties. They like areas with structure for them to hide in, such as rocks or taller grasses. They also love sand, especially the smaller, shore-dwelling species. Look for holes around the shore and wet sand. Canada has its own hotspots in Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and all the way to British Columbia. However, you can find these crustaceans all over the world. This list will never cover all the places you can go. But here is a nice reminder of Manja Bay in Australia, Beagle Channel in Argentina, northern Norway and Italy, where crabbing is also good for the ecosystem. A man in a raincoat holds a large crab with both hands on a boat on a calm sea as the sun sets in the areas mentioned above. You can usually find crabs all year round. However, some regions and species have more productive months than others. Wherever you are, research your local crab species and then find out when the best season is. Generally, the best season to go crabbing is usually summer or fall. These times are usually the most productive because the weather is warmer and the crabs have just come out or are preparing to spawn, making them more excited and hungry. Milder weather conditions also help us for the time of day. There is nothing too specific to follow. Daytime is a good time because of the sun, which helps you spot the crabs better. However, the tide is a more important factor. Experienced crabbers say that crabbing 2 hours before or after high tide is best. This is when the tide tends to be slower, making the crabs more accessible. Generally, when you go crabbing, random conditions can sometimes yield great results. The best thing to do is to go out when the opportunity presents itself. But if you want to plan for better conditions, take note of some of the tips above. Now comes the fun part: how to catch the crabs. There are many ways to successfully catch crabs. Try catching them by hand, using a net, or trying a trap. Let's take a closer look. Close-up of a hand holding a crab on a sandy beach on a sunny day. Get yourself some of these crustaceans by walking around the shoreline and tidal zone, and simply picking them up from the sand or rocks. Gently grasp your crab by the middle of the shell and be careful if they have any claws. Even though they are small, the force of their claw grip is quite painful. Nets are useful when trying to catch crabs, especially since their little legs carry them far and wide very quickly. You can use a small bait net or even a cast net. Just make sure you check the regulations for the species of crab you are targeting. Trapping is a popular method of catching crabs in many areas of the world. You may leave several traps in different areas and come back to find them full of crabs. This is not always the case, but it is certainly nice to find several traps full of crabs. Most areas require a permit to catch crabs, so make sure you are up to date on the latest regulations. A large crab trap covered in seaweed containing the head of a dead fish as bait. It is not always easy to catch a crab. Get it out of its hiding place or lure it into your trap. That is where bait comes in handy to lure them in. Crabs love a smelly, meaty meal, so having small, strong-smelling pieces of meat on display is the best way to attract them. This can include human flesh such as chicken or sea creatures such as small fish, eel parts and clams. Place a few pieces in an open area and wait for a crab to come out. You can then catch them or scoop them up, or you can use a hook. Crabs will sometimes bite artificial bait, which is another option you can try. The best bait for crabs is anything that consists of soft plastic and a small hook. A blue crab is suspended on a fishing line with some meat and a lead weight. Now that you have an idea of the bait, you need a hook to hook it. In this section, I will give you a little insight into the useful equipment for catching crabs. First of all, if you are fishing with a hook, you will need a hook small enough to fit into the mouth or claw of the crab. Place a small piece of meat on it, lower the hook into the crab's area, and wait for a slight pull. You will also want a very light setup. You can use a light rod with a 1000 spin reel. Add a 4 pounds braid and a 10 pounds fluorocarbon leader, and you are off to a good start. You don't need anything crazy to catch crabs, so this simple setup works well. If you are using a net, there are many different options. However, there are specific types of crab nets that are better suited to your crabbing needs. In addition to nets, crab traps are also very handy and come in a variety of styles and sizes. Additional equipment such as gloves, shovels, and crab measuring tapes are also useful when crabbing. You can protect yourself from crab claws with gloves, use a shovel to dig them up easily, and measure them to make sure they are suitable for holding. But these are optional extras. When it comes to harvesting regulations, however, it can be a little more difficult. This is because there are so many species of crabs out there. There are some that you can't harvest, some that have specific rules, and others that require special permits. The best way to make sure you're not breaking any regulations is to check with your local fish and wildlife department. They'll be able to educate you on the crab species in your area and the rules for catching them. It should come as no surprise that fresh, in-season crab is best. The good news, you can buy freshly caught crab any time of year, depending on the type of crab. Knowing what's in season for each type of crab will help you find, and expect, the freshest options, whether you're buying from a fish market or ordering at a restaurant. Here's when to prepare for crab season in your area and how to make the most of it. The main season for all crab species runs from October to January, when they typically reach their largest size and populations peak after spawning. Some regions even extend their crabbing season into July. Depending on the region and the specific type of crab, you'll know when the season is and when the crabs will be freshest. Some of the biggest crab-producing states, like Alaska and Maine, start their crab season in the fall, around October, and end it when temperatures start to rise in early spring. Some southern states, such as Florida and South Carolina, have crabbing seasons year-round. Some states have crabbing seasons in the warmer months instead of the winter when crabs are dormant and less active. For example, Maryland has a crabbing season that begins in April and ends in December. Before you pack your nets, traps, and buoys, check your state's fishing season and requirements. Most states list the allowable fishing seasons for each species on their fish and wildlife websites. Opening and closing dates are also listed, as are size limits and bag limits. If your state requires a fishing license, make sure you have one for each fisherman before you hit the water. Also, make sure you don't need an additional license for crabbing. Some states issue separate licenses for different species. Also, keep an eye out for changes in season closing dates. In some states, crab seasons will be shortened if fish and wildlife officials find that the population of a species is too low. Likewise, some states will not open crab seasons if overfishing threatens the population. Catching during these times can be a crime. Depending on the species and location, both hard-shell and soft-shell crabs may be available, but there are different times to eat hard-shell or soft-shell crabs. Early fall is the best time of year to catch and eat hard-shell crabs, especially Maryland blue crabs. In September and October, crabs tend to be larger, so each crab weighs more. Crabs available in supermarkets or restaurants early in the season may be the type that does not migrate during the winter. Soft-shell crabs come in 5 varieties: medium, hotel, premium, large, and whale. The average size is 3.5 to 4 inches, while the whale crab averages over 5.5 inches. These crabs tend to be more expensive because there is a short window when the crabs molt for harvest. This crab season begins in May and ends in September. You can usually find these crabs at specialty fish markets. Whether at your local market or on the menu at your favorite beach restaurant, you will likely find these other crabs. Some are cooked and frozen right on the boat, like snow crab and king crab. Stone crab, in season from October to May, these Atlantic crabs are caught for their meaty claws and are a Florida specialty. The black-tipped claws are removed and the crabs are released back into the water to regrow. Dungeness crab. This large crab has sweet meat and is caught in the Pacific Ocean from California to Alaska. The season lasts from December to spring. Alaska king crab. A single king crab leg can weigh up to a pound. These giant crabs are found in the cold waters of Alaska. Their season is in October and November. You'll find them frozen and ready to reheat. Their sweet meat tastes like lobster snow crab. Also found in cold waters, these large crabs hail from the North Atlantic and North Pacific. The season lasts from late fall to early summer. They are sold cooked and frozen. Jonah crab. This East Coast crab has a thick shell like Dungeness crab and is available from fall to spring. You'll often find them sold as claws or selected meat. The Bering Sea, the Aleutian Islands, and the Gulf of Alaska together produce an average of about 1/3 or more of the total U.S. crab catch. 10 species of crab are caught in the Alaska crab fishery, and 7 of these are commercially important: red king crab, Paralithodes kamchaticus, blue king crab, P. platypus, golden king crab, Lithodes equispinus, Tanner crab, Chianoicetes bairdi, snow crab, C. opalio, hairtail crab, Eremacris eisenbecki, and Dungeness crab, Cancer magister. 3 smaller species, red king crab, L. kuwaisi, slotted tanner crab, C. tanneri, and triangular tanner crab, C. angulatus, are landed primarily as bycatch in other crab fisheries. In addition to commercial fishing, subsistence and sport fishing also occur in many areas, but their contribution to total production remains small. The history of crab fishing dates back to 1930, but significant commercial efforts did not occur until the 1950s when the king crab fishery was developed in the Bering Sea. Harvest histories for different crab species show considerable variability. Alaska crab harvest, graph 1974 to 2004, and most stocks are currently in decline. Several explanations have been proposed for these conditions. Overfishing, recruitment declines due to adverse climatic conditions, unintentional bycatch of broodstock in other fisheries, and other reasons. Despite various restrictions and regulations over the past 2 decades, most of the declining stocks have not recovered. As a result, several preventative management measures have been implemented by federal and state agencies to conserve these stocks. Red king crab is distributed throughout the Bering Sea, Aleutian Islands, and Gulf of Alaska, with historical fishing centers in Bristol Bay, Norton Sound, Petrel Bank, Pribilof Islands, Kodiak Island, and northern southeast Alaska. Map of crab management activities. In contrast, blue king crab is found as a small, isolated population around St. Matthew Island, Pribilof Islands, St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, and in isolated cold water areas of the Gulf of Alaska. These 2 king crab species are found in greater numbers at depths below 180 meters. Yellow, brown, king crab is primarily found in waters along the continental slope of the Aleutian Islands, Bering Sea, and Gulf of Alaska at depths greater than 180 meters. The Aleutian Islands fishery accounts for the majority of yellow king crab landings. Red king crabs are deep-water species, occurring in waters deeper than 600 meters. They are primarily caught as byproducts in the grooved tanner and golden king crab fisheries. Hair crabs are primarily found near the Pribilof Islands. Tanner crabs occur in the eastern Bering Sea, the Aleutian Islands, and the Gulf of Alaska with major concentrations limited to less than 300 meters. Snow crabs occur in the northern and central Bering Sea on the continental shelf with major concentrations limited to less than 300 meters. Grooved tanner and triangle tanner crabs are other deep-water species found at depths greater than 200 meters in the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands. Dungeness crabs are found in estuaries and open waters from Dixon Entrance to Unalaska Island. They occur from the intertidal zone to depths greater than 300 meters. Prince William Bay, Cook Bay, Kodiak, the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Aleutian Islands, and southeast Alaska are historic centers of the Dungeness crab fishery. Nothing beats the taste of fresh crab. Whether you enjoy it steamed, boiled, or grilled, there's nothing quite like cracking open the shell and savoring the juicy meat. But getting there can be a bit of a hassle. So why do so many people still love eating crab? Let's take a look at some reasons why the effort and mess is worth it. Let's face it, eating crab can be a challenge. With its tough exterior, getting to the juicy meat inside can be quite a challenge. However, that difficulty seems to add to the appeal of eating crab. The challenge and reward make the experience all the more satisfying. Not only are you rewarded with a delicious meal, but you also get the satisfaction of knowing you put in the effort. It's like conquering a mountain, but with your stomach instead of your feet. Delicious flavor and succulent texture. While getting the meat out of its tough shell takes a little work, it's always worth it in the end. From steamed crabs to Maryland lump crab cakes, there are plenty of ways to prepare and enjoy this delicious seafood. The sweet, salty flavor of the seafood combined with the slight smoky flavor from grilling makes for an unforgettable experience. The texture of the crab meat is also something special. You get both firmness and flakiness, making it perfect for dipping in melted butter or your favorite sauce. And if you like spicy food, steaming or boiling the crab and adding Old Bay seasoning or red clay hot sauce will give you all the flavor you need. Not only is crab great on its own, it also adds flavor to countless dishes. From soups and stews to salads and sandwiches, you can use cooked crab meat as an ingredient in just about anything, even mac and cheese. Crab is also incredibly nutritious, providing essential vitamins and minerals like iron, zinc, potassium, magnesium, and more. It's also low in fat but high in protein, so it's not only delicious, it's good for you, too. Last but not least, one of the best things about eating crab is that it can be enjoyed as a social activity. Whether at home or outdoors, cracking crab is always more fun when shared with friends and family. Everyone can take turns cracking crabs while telling stories or jokes, making for an unforgettable evening filled with laughter and delicious food. Despite being a bit on the tough side, crab is incredibly popular around the world for its unique flavor and texture, as well as its versatility when used in other dishes. From the delicious taste to the fun social aspect and the sense of accomplishment from cracking open each crab leg, these are just some of the reasons why people keep coming back for this delicious seafood dish. Are you ready to try your hand at crabbing? If you want to catch the most crabs and have the best experience, it's important to know when to go. Here's everything you need to know about the best time of year to go crabbing. The best time of year to go crabbing depends on a number of different factors. Generally, crabs are most active and easiest to catch during the warmer months. In many areas, the best time to go crabbing is from late spring to early fall. However, the exact times may vary depending on where you live. In some places, crabbing season starts as early as March or April, while in others, it doesn't start until June or July. Be sure to check your local regulations and guidelines to make sure you're crabbing during the right season. To go crabbing, you'll need a few key pieces of equipment. First of all, you'll need a crab trap. You can purchase crab traps online or at a local sporting goods store. You will also need a line and bait, such as chicken necks or fish heads. Some crabbers prefer to use crab nets or hand lines instead of traps. Other useful equipment includes a pair of gloves, a pair of long-handled tongs for handling crabs, and a container to store your catch. Don't forget to wear sunscreen, a hat, and comfortable, waterproof clothing. The best places to crab vary depending on where you live. In general, crabs tend to congregate in shallow, murky water near docks or piers. Look for areas with a lot of crabbing activity, such as other crabbers or boats. You can also check local fishing supply stores or online forums for recommended crabbing spots. Crabs are most active at high tide, so many crabbers like to head out to sea at this time. However, some crabbers also have success at low tide. Many crabbers like to use chicken necks or fish heads as bait. Other options include squid, clams, or even live chicken. The number of crabs you can catch when crabbing varies depending on a number of factors, including the time of year, your location, and the size of your trap. Check your local regulations to find out how many crabs you are allowed to catch. If you are ready to try your hand at crabbing, the best time of year to go is during the warmer months. Japanese spider crabs live on the seafloor along the Pacific coast of Japan. They are found primarily on the continental shelf and on sandy and rocky slopes. When adult crabs are ready to spawn, they migrate to shallower waters, about 160 feet, 50 meters, deep. Juvenile crabs also live in shallower, warmer waters and migrate to deeper waters as they mature. These slow-moving crabs spend most of their time walking on the seafloor looking for food. They do not swim. Instead of hunting, these scavengers forage for dead and decaying matter along the seafloor. Their diet includes dead or decaying fish, invertebrates, and algae. Although most of what they eat is dead, they will occasionally pry open mollusks, tear and eat living algae, and catch small marine invertebrates. The large size and armored exoskeleton of the Japanese spider crab deter most ocean predators, but a hungry octopus or trawl net can snag and rip off one of the crab's long, fragile limbs. Japanese spider crabs are most vulnerable to predators immediately after molting, after they shed their exoskeleton and before their new shell hardens. Giant spider crabs also use camouflage. Their rugged shells help them blend in with the rocky ocean floor. Juvenile spider crabs will also decorate their shells with sponges or kelp to better camouflage themselves from predators. Adult Japanese spider crabs rely more on their size and claws to fend off predators. Humans eat these crabs as a delicacy during crabbing season. But because adult crabs live deep underwater, they are difficult for humans to catch. Efforts are being made to protect these animals and their populations from overfishing. When one of our crabs shows signs of molting, we move them to a separate cage so they can shed their old exoskeleton and let their new one harden in peace. Because Japanese spider crabs are opportunistic scavengers, our aquarists feed them a variety of foods, in a variety of sizes. Over the past 40 years, catches of Japanese spider crabs have declined. To help the population recover, Japanese law prohibits fishing during the mating season. Rising ocean temperatures due to climate change can negatively impact the species by reducing the number of larvae that survive to adulthood and by degrading seaweed beds, which reduces the amount of food that falls to the seafloor where the crabs live. In general, many people eat cold stone crab legs and they are a quality delicacy. You are more likely to find these crabs in fine dining establishments. They are known for their hard shells. They can be found in the Gulf of Mexico and the Florida coast. You can also add them to complex recipes. Many people describe the meat of stone crab legs as being flaky and a cross between lobster and shrimp. The meat is also very sweet. They are one of the most expensive crabs due to the flavor of the meat and the method of harvesting. The methods of harvesting vary because this crustacean is protected by law. To prevent extinction, the government restricts the way fishermen catch them. For example, fishermen will catch the crabs, cut off a claw, and release them.